I tweeted two things. I said, shameful for the New York Times obit of Charlie Kirk, said Julia Steinberg. Mr. Kirk was so vocal in his willingness to spread unsupported claims and outright lies. He said that drug hydroxychloroquine was 100% effective in treating the virus, which is not. That Twitter temporarily barred him in early March 2020, but the move only added to his notoriety and seemed to support his claim that he was muzzled by a liberal elite. Now, what's interesting about this is, like, that's the least offensive thing Charlie Kirk had said. Like, in terms of distasteful things, in terms of, like, objectively violent statements and dehumanizing rhetoric, I said this is all but a fraction of Charlie Kirk's honest perspective. He was quite proud of his positions. He defended them vociferously. Not sure why you'd find them distasteful to mention. Can't you paint any person in a bad light? You absolutely can. You absolutely can. But my expectation in this moment is for people to be sober in their analysis and be honest in their analysis. My expectation is not for the New York Times to be like, he deserved it or whatever. Obviously, I don't believe that either. But my expectation is for them to, at the very least, reflect a little bit about his positions, because this is the moment where you are introducing Charlie Kirk to a much broader audience. Reflect on his real legacy. And Matt Walsh said some stuff as well. He said, all Charlie Kirk ever did was have conversations with people. He didn't insult anyone. He made arguments. He debated. He wasn't an extremist in any way. Everyone who knew Charlie personally loved him. That's the kind of guy he was. They still killed him. I'm furious and heartbroken in equal measure. I cannot put into words how I feel. Maybe that is for the best. To which I responded with, Charlie Kirk opposed the Civil Rights Act, called George Floyd a scumbag, said he'd be worried about black pilots, and that he forced his daughter to carry a pregnancy to term if she was raped. He shouldn't have been killed, but he was definitely an extremist. The problem is, Matt Walsh doesn't think Charlie Kirk's an extremist. And the problem is, most Republicans don't think these positions are extreme positions. In a moment like this, when tensions are very high, for mainstream institutions to also launder his reputation or his output and rewrite his legacy after years and years of reflecting on it, after years and years of honest coverage about what he had said, down to the wire, down to the very last moment. This is crazy. You think this? You think it's crazy that I think that someone saying that their daughter, if they were raped in a hypothetical, that you would force them to carry a pregnancy to term is not an extreme position? Go ahead. Have that argument with anyone around the country. There are a lot less people who would agree with that position than there are people who would be repulsed by said position. I can't link Osita Nwanevu's blue sky take for you, but he said, and he is totally correct, and that's what my frustrations are a little bit as well. My sense is that most Americans had not heard of Charlie Kirk until yesterday. The first and perhaps only thing they're going to hear about him from the most trusted and important voices in American politics is that he was a model and constructive participant in good faith political discourse. That's crazy, because when you stake your reputation on a statement such as that one, you're signing off on all of this, and you're turning around and you're saying to the people that are listening to you that those are a part of the honest political discourse. You can say that this is a tragedy. This is supposed to have no place in any country's political discourse. Like, it's true. It's true. That's why we live in a civilization, okay? You don't have to demonstrate empathy for someone who does not have empathy for you, but you can still look at the situation and reflect on it and realize that this is a dangerous, unstable environment. An environment that absolutely requires legislative solutions. Look, the State Department indicated it would review the legal status of immigrants praising, rationalizing, or making light of Charlie Kirk's fatal shooting. What are we doing? But yes, Osita's take is correct on this. He covered Ezra Klein's New York Times article on this. He said, this is frankly incredible to me. Would Klein have said Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA was practicing politics in exactly the right way this time last week? Exactly the right way? Really? Would that have been a broadly accepted characterization of left of center? You can dislike much of what Kirk believed in the following statement. It's still true. Kirk was practicing politics in exactly the right way. He was showing up to campuses and talking with anyone who would still talk to him. He was one of the era's most effective practitioners of persuasion. When the left thought its hold on the hearts and minds of college students was nearly absolute, Kirk showed up again and again to break it. Slowly then, all at once, he did. College-age voters shifted sharply right in the 2024 election. This did not happen because of Charlie Kirk. This happened because of the anger and resentment that people had towards the administration that was in charge leading up to the election and their inability to address their economic anxieties. That's it. Charlie Kirk was an accelerant, certainly, but to make this false notion that he was like single-handedly responsible for this betrays the reality that is unfolding in front of us in real time. If Charlie Kirk was singularly responsible for the Gen Z turn towards Trump, and it wasn't more a systemic shift and them falsely assuming that Trump would present an alternative vision that would be better potentially, if you think that it was something beyond that, Charlie Kirk, until yesterday, was still very much an operator in the field. He was still going to college campuses. So why did that Gen Z swing back happen already? Because in the first 9 months of Trump's administration, Gen Z swung wildly back towards an antagonistic position against Donald Trump. This isn't to say that Charlie Kirk wasn't impactful. Of course he was, for sure. But he was taking advantage of the systemic forces, the systemic shift that was happening broadly, because he was still very much right there. He was very much still in operation, and yet the Gen Z attitude swung directly back in the opposite direction and became antagonistic to Donald Trump. This is inconsistent. This is bad analysis, and it is inconsistent with reality. It is inconsistent with the New York Times Siena polls that just came out this past week, reflecting on Gen Z attitude that is antagonistic to Trump now. It's also incorrect in terms of like, this is broad persuasion, or these people are actually using the field of debate to arrive at a truth. Like, everybody knows that this is content. You're cutting content and you're doing propaganda. There is a reason why Charlie would pick the targets that he picked. And it's not Charlie who started this process. It's not Charlie Kirk who was responsible for, the college campus debate field. Ben Shapiro did it all the time as he elevated his status as well, taking a bunch of hysterical college campus freshmen who have never been in front of a microphone, in front of a large audience, and like ritualistically humiliating them so you can make SJW-owned compilations, is not actually arriving at the truth, arriving at any sort of serious truth through testing your ideas in the field of battle. It's just propaganda. Shapiro did it. Steven Crowder did it. Also, very famously, the whole change my mind, that was Steven Crowder. So the assessment here of debate and why Charlie Kirk was doing these debates is also false, is also built around a falsehood. When the left thought it's holding hard, slowly, then all at once, the college-age voter shifted rapidly. That was not all Kirk's doing, but he was central in laying the groundwork for it. That is fair. He says that's not all Kirk's doing. I did not know Kirk, and I am not the right person to eulogize him, but I envied what he built. A taste for disagreement is a virtue in a democracy. Liberalism could use more of his moxie and fearlessness. In the inaugural episode of his podcast, Governor Gavin Newsom of California hosted Kirk, admitting that his son was a huge fan. What a testament to Kirk's project. Osita continues. He says, Charlie Kirk was not engaged in respectful political debate. Charlie Kirk condemns Zohran Mamdani for how he disgustingly eats rice. We in the West value cleanliness. We have utensils. Charlie Kirk says it doesn't feel right for London and New York City to have Muslim mayors. This is not respectful debate. It's just not. It's just pure racism being intellectualized and then being washed over by an intellectual giant such as Ezra Klein amongst the liberal intelligentsia, of course. Ezra Klein is a revered figure, is a respected figure by liberals. He has a prominent spot at the New York Times, and he's using that prominent spot to basically wash over a whole bunch of completely racialized screeds as though this was a reasonable disagreement that people had. Make no mistake, however, this is like the solution to this is not fucking gun violence. Obviously, that is insane. The difference, of course, here is that, yes, as someone also brought this up, if he said this about Jews, Ezra would not have this opinion of him. That's also true. As someone who can tonally be incendiary, I think there's a role for incendiary in politics. And I am certainly not a stranger to an incendiary tone myself, as you guys know. I have some of my highlights and lowlights. It's filled to the brim with incendiary statements. And yes, Charlie Kirk has said anti-Semitic shit as well. It doesn't matter. He's super pro-Israel. For a lot of these guys, it doesn't matter if you say stuff like that about Jews, okay? Calm down. As long as you're pro-Israel. And Charlie Kirk certainly was unimaginably pro-Israel. Just stop posting your RP Bozo shit. There's already a Canary Mission-style Charlie Kirk Death Celebrators website up and has doxed over 10,000 people so far. No matter how you feel, have some self-preservation, please. It's not worth it to say the same dumb shit others have already said. Exactly. You need to have a little bit of messaging discipline and operate from a position of self-preservation. You think you have anonymity online, you do not. You do not. These guys are literally out for blood. They're looking for anything and everything they can get out of the situation. While everybody understands that, like, I did not engage in any sort of celebration whatsoever, and even told people not to do so for self-preservation purposes, especially. There are still people who are upset with my analysis on, like, Alex Jones. Like, they're looking for anything that they can hold on to say, like, you are not sufficiently sad about this. They're using anything and everything they can under the sun to try and punish their ideological enemies. Anyway, as Osita says, as someone who can be tonally incendiary, I think there's a role for incendiary in politics. My problem with Kirk wasn't his tone, but the content of what he said, which I believe was immoral. All that aside, I wonder how readily mainstream voices would canonize a dead leftist speaking in this register as having engaged in respectful debate. Of course not. If the equivalent of Charlie Kirk on the opposing side is someone like myself, if I were to be assassinated under gruesome circumstances similar to Charlie Kirk, they would be celebrating it. They would literally be advocating to release the shooter if he were ever apprehended to begin with. They would call him a hero. They would say, we need more of that. We need more of this kind of death. Let's be real. Of course, if the right-wing pundits goading listeners towards violence, as Kirk himself did, get their way, we might find out soon enough. Exactly. The New York Times comment section is the best moderate publication in America. He was a traveling salesman, not interested in debate or listening to ideas, but performative showmanship. The spewing of vitriolic hate towards outgroups disguised in the rhetoric of conversations is nothing to be commended. Interesting. The right way in politics to spread hateful comments against Americans you don't like, or to condone gun deaths to have the freedom to bear arms. His death was sad, but don't sugarcoat his actions. That's my assessment as well. Like, to be gunned down in that way at the age of 31 is horrifying. It's a tragedy. It is. And it's unacceptable in American politics, and it's unacceptable across the board in all politics. There is a reason why we live in a society where there is a social contract that we abide by. This is ripping apart the social fabric. But that social fabric has been unwound for the past multiple years of unimaginable gun violence that Americans have experienced. That social fabric has been ripped apart by all the death and destruction that we deal overseas. And that death and destruction has violent consequences here on the home front as well. The fascist boomerang. And in the absence of any sort of serious considerations of how to solve some of these issues, that decentralized form of violence is only going to continue. And I think liberals, instead of taking a sober approach here and trying to engage with the structural inequities to address these issues, are simply just responding, and they're responding in the same way that Republicans are responding, by hailing Charlie Kirk as a champion, a hero, laundering his reputation, making it seem as though the way that they have covered this, the way that Charlie Kirk operated was actually good. What is this?
The debate will never save us, and the reason you have all of these left debate bros crying over Charlie Kirk dying is because they were actually buddy-buddy, and everything was actually just a game to them. This demonic rhetoric that actually causes harm to people of color, to minorities, to actual people, real, genuine violence and harm that is enacted through rhetoric that these people would...
I mean, I've been saying this. I've been saying that, like, realize how everyone hates Hasan Piker? Yeah, because he's not friends with any of them and they hate him for it. I'm reminded when Hasan Piker was at the DNC, Charlie tried to dab him up like they were buddies, and Hasan was so confused and ignored him. It absolutely is a game to the debate bros. They do not seriously care about the issues they speak about and rhetoric, or their rhetoric has on the masses. None of this is to say that it's a good thing that this happened, okay? I'm not doing that, obviously. I do think that it's a disservice to the public if all of these trusted liberal institutions are engaging in the same kinds of obituaries that you hear from Sean Hannity. Kind of weird how everyone turned on you. It's not weird, man. It's not. It's just, it's an expectation. A lot of people, if you believe that there is an ideological goal here, if there is a higher purpose here, then you don't give a shit about petty disagreements because it comes across as narcissistic. If you have a broader ideological goal in mind, even when others are attacking you nonstop and in increasingly more belligerent ways, what do I always say? What do I always do? I have a policy, a principle of not actively attacking those to my left flank because, one, I understand that we don't have any power in this country, and two, these guys are ultimately on the same cause. They're directionally fighting for the same issues. Bro, you literally say you're against the death penalty and even advocate for everyone, including Nazis, to get healthcare? Of course.
Create and spew all over the world And then the left guys would come in and believe that they're saving the world, doing justice, but in reality, it was all just a fucking game to them. That's why they're crying because he's gone. Because it was all a fucking game. Debate was never about...
This nerd is trying to sound scary. You had a Houthi on your live stream. Instead of calling American heroes extremists, you should return to your native Turkey before we prosecute you for material support of a designated foreign terrorist organization. Please, please, you are such a pussy. Like, do you feel like a big man? You're like, hey, man, I'm going to get daddy to prosecute you. I'm going to get daddy to prosecute you. Oh, I don't like it. Assuming such an interview would be material support doubtful, Houthis were not even a foreign terrorist organization at the time of the interview. I understand tensions are high, but maybe you can stop calling for baseless criminal prosecutions of your political enemies. Okay, we got a liberal lawyer defending me. This is a former Destiny Orbiter. I expect this from the right, which Will Chamberlain is from the right. But what I don't like is when I see people who present themselves as like liberal figures. I do not expect this from people who present themselves as liberals online, you know, like Ethan Klein or Losers Brigade, right? Like the people who present themselves as like centrists, apolitical people. They do this exact same thing. They use the exact same language. They demand the exact same criminal prosecution. And it's like, it's ridiculous. Like, are you Steven Crowder? Like, what the fuck are you? I think people need to let go of petty disagreements that they have. There's a reason why like TikTok's response to Charlie Kirk from liberals and leftists alike has been very different than I think like all of the other mainstream news outlets, because that's where Charlie Kirk actually found a massive audience. But because of that, that's where Charlie Kirk was also hated severely, right? Because they know his takes. They've seen his takes, right? Those same positions that garnered a lot of attention from young conservatives all around the country were exactly the reasons why that dehumanizing language, for example, that he used all the time is the reason why a lot of people actually were very frustrated with him and maybe even despised him. But a lot of these people are completely oblivious to Charlie Kirk's worldview, and they are being presented a totally false image. Will Chamberlain, the guy calling for D Workwear and Mehdi Hasan to be deported because he disagrees with them, is a trust fund kid who assumed control over a significant amount of money at 25, failed to fulfill his dream as a financier, and now works for the most shameful culture war factory slop job. Interesting. That was the guy who was like, you interviewed a Houthi, wait until we destroy you. I'm hearing a lot of messages like this one. You killed the one man that was willing to come to you peacefully and debate. The talking is over. Like, everybody out here, everybody's basically operating like they're fucking anime villains, you know? Everybody is like Sephiroth posting on the timeline, like, oh, it's time. Your time is going to come. This is like, it reminds me of like 2016 era, you know, Antifa, what's his name? Grimmy, whatever, the Philadelphia logo, like, you know, young college freshmen who first were learning about like Marxist Leninism, gritty posting. It reminds me of that. Of course, the difference is like, young college freshmen who have never shot a gun are not as serious about doing this kind of decentralized violence as, you know, divorced dads with an arsenal of weapons and a willingness to go out and do this kind of violence. So it's a little bit more serious when, you know, MAGA family annihilators actually make these sorts of threats. It still hopefully will not amount to anything super consequential, I hope. The issue is people on the left who are saying him being killed is a good thing. Brother, wake up. Do you not see what's going on here? How do you not understand that this is the exact same thing, but on the other side, and this side actually has the ears of the administration who is saying similar things, at least on the point of political persecution against political dissidents. A bunch of random TikTokers and a bunch of random people being like, I hated this guy, I'm celebrating his death, is not the same as like an administration that is going to now use as an opportunity to literally engage in political persecution and maybe even more. As a matter of fact, the people cheering on the left are doing so because of their lack of power. It's a recognition of not having any power to change anything at all, any of the structural inequities. Do you understand? That's who cheers for this kind of thing. People who have completely lost hope that any sort of real, tangible, material improvements will happen for them. This is what I mean when I say the social contract has exploded in front of our eyes. The social contract is gone. People do not feel like they can ever own a home. The American dream is not happening for anybody. And that causes a lot of enmity, that causes a lot of anger, that causes a lot of resentment. And in that resentment, there are those on the right who redirect their anger and animosity, led by, shepherded by even the likes of Charlie Kirk and, you know, the Trump administration in general, towards marginalized groups. And the people on the left look to these structural inefficiencies, recognize their inability to change them, and then basically sit around and celebrate when stuff like this happens. But to say that the deck is not stacked against the left, and liberals in general as well, in a situation like this is so fucking stupid. You are denying abject reality that is right in front of your eyes. You're getting mad at a bunch of people that you have presented in your mind as like the real enemy here on the left for doing something that Republicans have never stopped doing, okay? Never, ever, ever. They're doing it right now. Do you understand? Like, you're over here saying, well, you know, it's because the real issue is a bunch of leftists are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Okay, well, there's a bunch of right-wingers here saying, like, we have to start killing these leftists.